For the past 4 months, scientists now believe avian flu has been spreading through dairy cows in several states. And since then, the highly virulent virus has jumped into poultry, cats, and at least one human. Here to catch us up on what we need to know is our own Dr. Joe Sirven of What's Health Got to Do with It, which airs on WJCT every Saturday at 4. Welcome, Dr. Joe.
And always a pleasure to see you.
It's a pleasure to have you. So, Dr. Joe makes a house call to our program once a month to talk medical news and to take your calls and questions. You can reach out to Dr. Joe at First Coast Connect at WJCT.org, or you can call us at 904-549-2937. And if you don't want your name used, that's all right. You can just tell us. Dr. Joe, I want to get to the bird flu in just a minute. But first, I want to touch a story that's on the front page of the Sunday New York Times. Actually, I have it here, a little visual display. So this is asking whether the medical establishment ignored or downplayed serious harm caused by COVID vaccines. What's being talked about here?
In that article is basically looking at what are the side effects of the COVID-19 vaccine. One of the things is that there was a very strong push to get this as many people vaccinated as fast as they could. They did trials, but normally even after you do trials, there's a lot of surveillance, which means you take a look to see what pops up. As you may remember, there were some serious side effects, and I don't even think the Johnson & Johnson vaccine specifically isn't even offered in the United States, and that was associated with the concern about heart inflammation in young men. There was a case of Guillain-Barré. That is a neurologic condition where there's antibodies attacks your nerves and can be fairly serious.
That's kind of what they call locked-in syndrome.
But then there's these, but those are the more serious, those are the big serious ones, because that's always being watched for. Then you get things that aren't life-threatening, but they are problematic. And that's what that article details, which everything from ringing in your ears to syndromes where you have something called POTS, which is you can pass out or feel dizzy when you get up quickly. This is a type of stuff that now we find out. Sometimes it takes a decade or longer to collect to see where the signal in all of this. Now, this is all happening amidst the sense that you want people to get vaccinated. You still have to do a risk-benefit analysis. And COVID is still worse than the side effects. Of course, for some people, they may have the problems that are associated with that. And that's what I kind of always look at this. There's risk-benefit with all vaccines.
And all medicine.
Everything. There's no such thing. I think that's axiomatic in medicine, meaning there's no such thing as a drug without a side effect. It just doesn't exist. And that's true for very gentle things like an aspirin to something like a COVID vaccine. Does that mean you shouldn't get vaccinated? No. Please get vaccinated. But we have to know more, and this is the type of stuff that needs to be collected.
And I think that one of the questions that the article raises is, or the concerns, is that maybe some people in the medical establishment were reluctant maybe to address these because of the really hyper anti-vax, sentiment that was fed by a lot of misinformation, and they perhaps didn't want to feed that fire by giving attention to these few serious cases.
That's probably an accurate representation. I mean, anti-vaccine issues have impacted the number of people who get vaccinated. The vaccine's still a good thing, but normally you have the other side of the coin, which is there are some people that can run into side effects. And what that article told me is basically perhaps they didn't get enough attention and they shouldn't just be gaslit. No, this is on your head. It has something else. It merits being looked at.
Well, if you're just joining us, I'm talking to our own Dr. Joe Sirven. He's here for his monthly house call to answer your healthcare questions. If you've got a call, you can reach us at 904-549-2937. You can also email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Dr. Joe, let's move on to another medical headline. It's a pretty important one these days. We know that the virus known as bird flu has found now in 36 dairy cow herds across 9 states and now even in a dairy farm employee. Why is this concerning to scientists?
It's the avian flu is always a concern because a flu that jumps into mammals can then lead to another mutation that then turns into human to human transmission. And then we have ourselves a new virus and a potential mega problem, like similar to what happened with COVID. It's something that has been monitored for a while because if a virus jumps from species to species and it becomes something that's easy to catch, and this appears to be fairly virulent, certainly amongst these mammals, the dairy cows, that can be a problem. And there was a human case in Texas, that worker, who has since recovered, but did have this particular strain of avian flu, and that became a worry. Now they just published the what how he presented. It was kind of unusual because his symptoms were that of conjunctivitis. His eyes were intensely red, and it's believed that he may have contacted it because even though he wore gloves, he did not wear respiratory equipment in these dairy herds, and he may have accidentally seeded the virus in his eyes. But it presented in this very unusual way, which is conjunctivitis.
Pink eye, we think of.
Exactly, and that's how it came to be known. Now, again, he's recovered. No one in the family got it, but it is a concern.
We've got an email from Paul. He says, packed and overcrowded factory farming, over-reliance on industrial meat processing, and plain old greed have led to the increase of diseases spreading from one species to another. And he urges people to adopt a healthier and vegetarian lifestyle. One thing that astonished me in looking at this issue was the fact that less so dairy cows, but cattle in general are fed something that's called poultry litter, which is essentially the leavings on the factory floor from like a chicken factory. So, I mean, it just sounds ghastly, and it's hard to imagine that waste product is food, but I guess it's actually accepted. Could be a way to transmit disease.
Yeah, that as I'm listening to this, and I apologize if anyone's watching for my facial expressions. That is just gross. But the reality is, that is why, and your emailer is absolutely right. Looking to the conditions of that is exactly a way that we can get ourselves into the situation where you have novel viruses, novel things that can really hurt all of us. So look at your labels. If you're going to eat meat or something like that, there are humanely raised labels now, which kind of helps to disseminate or avoid some of this type of stuff that you're talking about. But yet that is just not a pleasant thought. And number two, it can't be healthy. It just can't.
Well, this was an issue even back as far as mad cow disease, right?
Absolutely. Now, in mad cow, which is very different, there was a concern that some cows, and this was, if I recall correctly, in Britain, they were fed like almost other cow stuff, like that was on the floor. And this form of almost cannibalism, if you will, was one of the things that was found to be led to this particular disease. So it's just a reminder, it can come up in any way, shape, or form.
So unrelated to that, we have a call from Francis calling from McClenny. Good morning, Francis. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you, Dr. Joe?
I'm good. Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you, too. Listen, I was golfing yesterday, and I developed two large, I guess it's a fluid deposit under both of my eyes.
Huh. And how are you now? I guess would be my first question I'd have for you.
Well, they don't hurt. They don't bother me, but they're just very unsightly.
Huh. Although I can't practice medicine, I probably can't do that when I haven't seen someone in person. I will say, if someone was just saying that to me, I would first be worried, is there an allergy situation going out there? If this is that time of year, if you were outdoors and something like that happens, I just wonder, grass, pollen, any of those type of things. And we are still very much in that season where something like that's happening. I would probably, if you could, like, contact primary care doctor that you see, or provider, whoever that is, show them a picture. Those pictures are worth a lot. I wouldn't describe it. I would actually photograph it, upload it to a portal if you could, and see what they say, because that's typically how I think that may get to your answer there.
Thanks for
Okay.
calling.
Well, I'm planning on going to the urgent care center to have them take a look at it.
Perfect. I hope you recover quickly, whatever that is.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You bet.
All right. Thanks, Francis. I want to talk now about another headline that's kind of interesting, could be worrisome, could be, for some people, great news. Ozempic babies.
I never thought this is what I'd be talking about, but okay, we've talked about Ozempic for almost so many other things. For it's this great weight loss drug, an anti-diabetes drug. So it came out of TikTok. So this is out of social media reports. A lot of these anecdotal stories of people who were previously not able to conceive, suddenly pregnant. Now, what that means is unclear, because one of the interesting points is that when the drug was being trialed in the United States with subjects, pregnant women and women who could become pregnant were excluded, because that is a standard approach. So here we are now, you have a phenomenon, everyone is using this, and it's unclear whether it's a direct impact on fertility, or is it somehow that if you lose the weight, your hormones become more able to kind of level off to kind of lead to pregnancy, or does it render a birth control pill less effective?
And we do know that obesity can be a hindrance to fertility.
Absolutely. And so if you lose this weight, does that, when you get into normal weight or below it, does it change things? And that's a failure. The fact that we don't know that in this situation, I think is terrible. That just tells us that we have to figure out a better way when you trial this stuff out, because no one knows. And the other things, we don't know the impact of the drug on an unborn child. In fact, the manufacturers say you should discontinue this 2 months before you even conceive, because they don't know.
And so now people are finding out they're pregnant while they're on the drug in some cases, and then taking themselves off the drug immediately. But we know that this drug does have this reputation for coming with some really, possibly rapid regain of weight. The women who are pregnant are describing just unbelievable, urges to eat, unlike their previous pregnancies, or, unlike what's typically expected. And whether that's a Ozempic side effect or not, I think we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of what we do know. Let's say if you're not pregnant and you stop the drug, we do know that people do tend to rebound and gain the weight, because a lot of times what it does is just shuts down your desire to eat, and then when you're off of it, that goes higher. No one really understands what happens when you shut it down and you're pregnant. I mean, that's just asking for problems. I would say, if you want to become pregnant, or please come off that drug, but under the guise of medical care, because there's just so many unknowns.
And there's so many people who seem to be just ordering this drug online and not going through a doctor.
There's a black market for this, because there's shortages left and right for Ozempic and its cousin sister drugs. And the demand is so out of control. Please, this is, if you're pregnant, this is one of those things to kind of talk to someone about.
It's good advice. I want to shift to a topic that's getting a lot of attention today and this whole week. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month. The city of Jacksonville has launched a mental health initiative to educate the public. And there's actually going to be a phone bank here tomorrow at WJCT from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. What do we know about the need in the community and what this phone bank is going to address?
What we know is that as we know that mental health issues are a problem everywhere in the U.S. Jacksonville is clearly in that mix. This is a fantastic approach from the city of Jacksonville to really try to let people know there's help out there. There's a hotline. There are sources, or at least provide those resources. So I applaud the mayor's office, Dr. Joshi, the chief health officer, for putting this out there, because this is one of those areas that I think could help a lot of people, because there's such a level of depression, anxiety out there, and people don't have to suffer so much.
And especially with young people, an issue that is, great concern. And, one of the messages they want to get out is the 988, which is a mental health lifeline. But there are other services available that people should be aware of.
Absolutely. A lot of people struggle in terms of finding those mental health resources. They do exist. They have been ramping up in multiple different areas around town. So definitely, if you can, participate.
All right. The number for that phone bank tomorrow is 904-516-2511. If you want to call, that's from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Dr. Joe, it's so nice to have you here. Thanks for coming for a house call.
And always a pleasure.